Of course, friends, buckle up, because the story I'm telling you today isn't just dry facts from a textbook. This is a story of desperation and genius, of metal and blood, of an improvisation that, for a few terrifying months in 1941, became a real nightmare for German tank crews. We'll look into the very heart of the catastrophe from which our future weapon of victory was born. And I promise you will learn things that are rarely talked about a machine without a name, about a forced masterpiece that was almost forgotten. Don't fast forward. It will be very intense and very interesting. And your opinion is important to me. So after reading, dive into the comments. Let's discuss. All right, let's go. The hell of the summer of 41. The context in which a miracle was born. To understand what the ZiS-30 was, you need to forget for a moment about parades, about the motherland calls, posters, and even about the heroic defense of the Brest fortress. You need to look the truth in the eye. The summer of 41 is sheer hell. There's a colossal, incomprehensible gap between plans and reality. German tank wedges, the panzers of Guderian Hoth, are cutting through our defensive lines like a hot knife through butter. Our infantry, brave to the point of madness, is perishing in encirclements. And the artillery, the main god of war, and the only truly effective anti-tank means at that time, is bogged down. In the literal sense, towed guns, those very 45s and 3-inch guns that were supposed to stop the Tigers, though back then these were mainly PZ.3s and PZ.IVs, were desperately lagging behind. They were pulled by horse teams or on slow-moving tractors. By the time you deployed the gun at a new position, by the time you prepared to fire, the German tanks had already flanked you, and their motorized infantry was spraying the crews with machine gun fire. The guns were destroyed without having fired a single shot. The artillerymen, the army's elite, died with them. And it is in this chaos, in this brew of panic, heroism, and despair, that one man stands up. His name is Vasily Gavrilovich Grabin, a genius of artillery systems, a man with a character of steel and a mind sharpened for one task: to create the best guns in the world. Even before the war, he fought like a lion for his new gun, the ZS-2 with a caliber of 57 millimeters. It was something phenomenal. During testing, its armor-piercing shell penetrated armor 90 millimeters thick at a distance of 1.5 kilometers. A death sentence for virtually any German tank of that period. This was a gun from the future. But then a terrible enemy of all progress interfered: bureaucratic stupidity. Marshal Kulik, the man responsible for armaments, looked at the results and made a monstrous decision. He said, "Why do we need such a powerful gun? The Germans don't have armor that thick. This weapon is excessive." And the production of the ZS-2 was halted. Yes, you heard that right. In 1941, on the eve of the war, the best anti-tank gun in the world was shelved. Grabin was furious, but could do nothing. And then came June 22nd, and it very soon became clear that what was excessive was not Grabin's gun, but Marshal Kulik's thinking. The German tanks, which in his opinion did not exist, were smashing our troops left and right. And then fate makes a bizarre zigzag. The order from the Kremlin: make something, anything. In July of 41, the situation became critical. It was urgently, immediately, needed yesterday to find some anti-tank means that could keep up with the rapid pace of the German offensive. People's Commissar of Armaments Boris Lvovich Vanikov, another legendary figure, a man who went through Stalin's prisons and returned to his post to save the country, set the task: create mobile tank destroyers, at any cost, from whatever is available. And then Grabin remembers his mothballed ZS-2 barrels. The idea was in the air: mount the gun on a self-propelled chassis. But on what? Tank chassis were going to the front faster than they could be produced. And then the gaze falls on an artillery tractor, the T-20 Komsomolets. It was a tiny, nimble tracked vehicle. Essentially, a tractor with thin armor and an open top, created for towing light guns. Its production had already been halted at the Moscow plant No. 37, which had switched to producing T-30 tanks. But some stock remained in warehouses, and more could be gathered from the troops. Plant No. 92 in Gorky, led by Grabin, receives the order: combine the uncombinable. The most powerful, long-barreled gun, and the light, almost toy-like chassis. Engineer Pyotr Fyodorovich Muravyov was put in charge of the project. Work went on around the clock. Blueprints, calculations, welding. There was no time for testing or refinement. The war dictated its terms. Give us at least 100. Now! And they gave. The design was insanely simple. The body was removed from the Komsomolets. A steel platform was placed on it, and the oscillating part of the ZiS-2 with its shield was mounted on that. Ammunition, 20 shells in boxes right on the platform. For self-defense, a DT machine gun. Crew. A driver in an armored cab at the front and 4 crew members. Commander, gunner, 2 loaders at the back. On a platform open to all winds and shrapnel. No roof, no proper communication. To give a command to the driver, you had to shout or bang on the armor. Thus, the ZiS-30 self-propelled artillery mount was born. Without a name, without a legend, just an index. The anatomy of improvisation. Why it was both brilliant and terrible. Let's break down this machine to its bones, as the designers themselves would have done. What did they get in the end? The genius, what made it a killer? The gun. Graben's 57 millimeters. At a distance of 1,100 meters, it guaranteed the destruction of any German tank from 41. An armor-piercing composite rigid APCR shell, that legendary coil, penetrated up to 100 millimeters of armor at 500 meters. Phenomenal power. For comparison, the standard 45 millimeter gun could only scratch the frontal armor of a PZ.4 from similar distances. Mobility. The Komsomolets could reach 50 kilometers per hour on the highway. That's incredibly fast for the time. It could quickly dash out from cover, fire 1 or 2 accurate shots, and immediately disappear before the enemy figured out where the fire was coming from. The shoot-and-scoot tactic was its native element. Surprise. The Germans weren't expecting such a threat. They were used to anti-tank guns being something static, tied to a position. But here, a nondescript, low-slung vehicle would dart out of a forest edge, fire from a distance at which their own guns were still useless, and vanish. It was demoralizing. The horror, what made it a death trap. Overload. The Komsomolets chassis was designed to tow a load of 1 to 2 tons. But here they put on it a gun weighing over a ton, a platform, a shield, ammunition. The combat weight exceeded 4 tons. The suspension, especially the rear road wheels, was pushed to the limit and broke down at every opportunity. Height and stability. The gun was tall, the center of gravity terribly high. When firing straight ahead or at a slight angle, the vehicle would rock like a boat in a storm. And if firing to the side. Frontline reports state in black and white, cases of overturning during firing have been recorded. Imagine, you take up a position, aim at a tank, fire, and flip over. The end. Zero protection. The crew on the platform was exposed to bullets, shrapnel, even large-caliber armor-piercing machine gun fire. Survival depended only on speed, maneuver, and luck. Resource. The operational range only 150 kilometers. The engine, working at its limit, quickly failed. There was no repair base whatsoever. Komsomolets were no longer produced. There were no spare parts for them. Such was the paradox. A one-day machine. A technical curiosity that, however, in the specific conditions of the autumn of 41, became the most effective anti-tank means of the Red Army. In the fire, the combat path of a ghost. And so these 101 machines, that's exactly how many they managed to assemble, scrounging up all available Komsomolets, ended up on the hottest sections of the front, near Moscow, on the southwestern direction. The first reports sounded like a hymn. On October 1st, 41, just a couple of weeks after the first battles, a report arrived at the artillery committee. ZiS-30 self-propelled mounts are being successfully used in combat. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of a gunner in one of these vehicles for a minute. Mid-October, near Moscow. Mud, sleet. Our platoon of 3 ZiS-30s is camouflaged at the edge of a forest near a road. They told us a German column with tanks is moving down it. We hear the rumble of engines. The commander, leaning out waist-deep, commands, "Gunner armor-piercing. Target. Lead tank. range 800, track it. I turn the handwheels, catching the gray silhouette in the panoramic sight. It's a PZ.4 with a short gun. They don't know we're here yet. The driver has already started the engine. We're ready to retreat. Fire! The recoil. The gun jerks back. Our entire shaky structure shudders and settles on its springs. A cloud of smoke and dust from the barrel. A second later, a bright flash on the target. A hit. The tank stops, smoke pouring from it. Retreat! The commander yells, and our driver lurches into reverse, then turns around and disappears into the depths of the forest. A minute later, our former position will be plowed up by return fire. But we are no longer there. That's exactly how they operated. Ghosts vanishing after the shot. The Germans began to fear them and hunt for them. Losses were horrific. But every knocked-out ZiS-30 managed to take out 2, 3, or even 5 enemy vehicles before that. It bought time, the most precious commodity in that 41, at the cost of its flimsy construction and the lives of its crews. Why did they disappear? A victim of success and circumstances. By the summer of 42, there were almost no ZiS-30s left on the front. Why? The answer is simple and terrible. Nothing to repair with. The Komsomolets chassis was unique. It wasn't being produced. Every broken rear bogie, every failed engine turned the deadly self-propelled gun into a stationary target. There was nowhere to get spare parts. They burned out. They simply burned up in the crucible of the first, most terrible battles. The last vehicles lived out their days in training units, where new self-propelled gunners were trained on them. Alternatives appeared. The industry, evacuated to the Urals and Siberia, began producing new, more balanced vehicles. The Su-76 appeared on a special chassis. Production finally resumed of the ZS-2 itself, now appreciated at its true worth, but as a towed gun. The need for a risky improvisation disappeared. There was an attempt to create a successor, the ZS-41, on a half-track all-terrain vehicle chassis. But fate was unrelenting. The plant producing these chassis was evacuated, and the project died before it was born. The ZS-30 became a brilliant flash of lightning in the black sky of war. The idea proved so right that it was instantly picked up worldwide. The Germans, having stumbled over the same problems with sluggish anti-tank artillery, already in 42 began stamping out their own tank destroyers, Martyrs and Hetzers, which were, in essence, the same ZS-30 but better protected. We responded with the Su-76, Su-100, the formidable Su-105 and Su-85. But the progenitor of this concept of a poor but deadly tank hunter was precisely it, the faceless 57mm anti-tank gun on a self-propelled mount. History lessons. What does this story tell us today? So why am I telling you about this strange, imperfect machine in such detail? Not just because it's a gripping story, but because it contains a lesson for all times. Genius is born in the grip of necessity. Without the catastrophe of 41, there would have been no ZS-30. When their backs were against the wall, they found both engineering ingenuity, Grabin, Muravyov, and administrative will, Vanikov, to achieve the impossible in a matter of weeks. Lesson 2. The idea is more important than perfection. The ZS-30 was far from ideal, but it proved a vitally important idea. An anti-tank weapon must be mobile and must go into battle where the situation demands, not where horses have managed to drag it. This idea outlived the vehicle itself and defined the development of all post-war anti-tank weaponry, right up to modern missile systems on automotive chassis. The cost of wrong decisions. The ZS-2 was a weapon from the future. Its removal from production was a tragic mistake, paid for with the blood of thousands of artillerymen in the summer of 41. The story of the ZS-30 is the story of an attempt to urgently correct that mistake when the enemy was already at the gates. It's a lesson for any manager. Listen to your engineers, your visionaries. To ban and postpone is easy. To catch up with a train that has already left the station is incredibly difficult and bloody. Friends, this story is not about metal. It's about people. About the crew that warmed themselves by the engine of their unreliable, shaky vehicle in a damp October of 41, knowing that tomorrow they would have to dash out under fire again. about the engineers who drew and welded without leaving their workbenches to give the front a chance, about the idea that barely born pointed the way to victory. So, when you see a small, unassuming vehicle with a very, very long barrel in a museum, stop by it. That's the ZiS-30, the ghost of 41, a patch on a pierced front line, the first cry of a new era in artillery, a machine without a name that deserves to be remembered. And what do you think of this story? Was it worth undertaking such a risky project, knowing its flaws? What modern weapon systems, in your opinion, are born from a similar improvisational scheme? Write in the comments. Let's discuss. Your opinion is priceless to me, and if such stories grab you, be sure to subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more material ahead about forgotten, secret, and real weapons that don't always make it into official chronicles but decided the fate of battles. Hit the like button if you think such machines and their crews are true heroes. Until next time,